She was grieving, carrying her son's final letter and military papers, yet the airline looked at her like a threat, not a mother. What happened next sparked outrage across the country. There's a certain kind of silence that settles in an airport before dawn. Not the peaceful kind, more like everyone's holding their breath. At 4:35 a.m., Monroe Regional Airport barely stirred. A cleaning cart rolled slowly past Gate 3. Vending machines blinked in half-darkness. And at the check-in counter, under tired fluorescent lights, Selene Drayton stood with her son's name heavy on her chest. She didn't cry. Not now. She had done enough of that over the past week. What she felt now was something deeper, tighter. A dull ache that pressed behind her ribs and made every breath feel like swallowing glass. She stood alone, wearing a simple navy dress. No makeup. Just her hands gripping a leather folder so tightly that the corners were bent. Inside were the papers that proved her son, Private First Class Jorian Drayton, was coming home in a flag-draped casket. He was 21. Jorian had died in an accident at his training base in Colorado Springs. Selene had gotten the call 6 days ago. Her knees had buckled, but she refused to drop the phone. She promised him, years ago, when he first talked about joining the army, that if anything ever happened, she would bring him home herself. This trip wasn't a choice. It was a promise. She was his military escort. Authorized, documented, approved. But none of that mattered to the woman behind the counter. Selene approached the desk quietly. "Excuse me," she said, voice calm but not timid. "I'm here for the flight to Colorado Springs. I'm listed as a military escort." The woman looked up from her screen, brows lifted just slightly. "Military escort?" she repeated, her tone edged with doubt, like the words themselves didn't quite fit Solene's face. "And who are you escorting, ma'am?" "My son," Selene answered, steady. "Private First Class Jorian Drayton." The woman blinked. No nod, no change in expression. She just reached for her keyboard. "I'll need to see your identification," she said flatly. Selene reached into her purse, pulled out her Louisiana driver's license and the envelope from the Department of the Army. Inside were the travel orders, Jorian's identification number, and the official document authorizing her as next-of-kin escort. She placed them carefully on the counter. The woman glanced at the license, then at Selene, then back again. Her hand hovered before she reached for the documents. She didn't open them right away. Instead, she tapped a button on her desk phone and spoke without looking up. "Can I get a supervisor to the front desk?" Selene didn't flinch. She didn't ask why. She just stood there, watching the woman pick up the documents like they might bite her. "I've got a woman here claiming to be a military escort," the woman said into the phone, not bothering to lower her voice. "Yeah, says she's traveling with a fallen soldier. She has paperwork." Okay. Selene felt it then. Not anger, not yet. Just a slow, creeping awareness. The kind that wraps around your stomach and settles in deep. She looked around. No one else was in line. 2 TSA agents chatted by security. A janitor paused, pretending to fix a trash can, but watching her too. That's when the supervisor arrived. Tall, pale, and clearly not awake yet. His badge read, B. Lasker. "Problem?" he asked the woman behind the desk. "She says she's escorting a body," the woman said, handing over the papers. "Just wanted a second pair of eyes on this." Lasker glanced through the folder, frowning slightly. "You got your army ID, ma'am?" he asked Selene. "I'm not active duty," she replied. "I'm his mother, next of kin. The escort papers are right there." He flipped through the documents again. "Okay, but we'll still need to verify this with the military contact on file. Just standard protocol." No one said it, but Selene heard what they weren't saying. She didn't look the part. She wasn't in uniform. She didn't have a military haircut. She didn't come with a folded flag under her arm or a grieving husband by her side. She just had Jorian's photo in her wallet and the strength to get out of bed this morning. And somehow that wasn't enough for them. But the moment she opened her mouth to speak, the whole tone of the morning shifted. "I'm not here for a stranger," Selene said, her voice steady, though something sharp brewed underneath. "I'm here for my son." She reached into her folder and gently pulled out a laminated photo. It was Jorian in uniform, standing tall, proud, his right hand in a salute and his left resting on his thigh. It was the photo she kept in her purse since he shipped out, the one he made her promise to carry with her on this trip. She laid it down in front of them. The airline supervisor, Laska, barely glanced at it. The woman behind the counter didn't look at all. "I understand you're upset," Laska said, holding up a hand. "But we have to follow our verification process. We need to make sure you are who you say you are." Selene didn't blink. "I've already handed you everything the army gave me. My license matches the documents. Those are his escort orders. What exactly are you trying to verify?" There was no answer. Not a real one. Just a silence that stretched long enough to say what they wouldn't say out loud. That's when the man behind her cleared his throat. He was older, maybe late 60s. His ball cap had a patch on it that read, 82nd Airborne Veteran. He'd been listening since she stepped up. "You treating all Gold Star parents like this?" he asked calmly. Neither Laska nor the desk agent responded. "I watched her hand you orders from the US Army," the man went on. "What else do you need? Blood samples?" Selene turned slightly, grateful but not surprised. Her father had served in Vietnam. Her brother, too. There was a certain way military families carried each other, even in silence. Laska shifted. "It's not about who she is," he said defensively. "It's about procedure. We've had impersonation cases before." "Is that so?" the veteran asked. "And do those cases usually involve a mother flying alone with a folded escort letter from Fort Carson?" Still no answer. The woman behind the counter finally spoke again. "We'll need to wait for confirmation from our regional operations contact. He'll call us back soon." "How long is soon?" Selene asked. "Could be 5 minutes. Could be longer." Selene looked down at her ticket confirmation, then at the clock on the wall. The flight was scheduled to board in 34 minutes. She had timed everything carefully, down to the minute, because she knew the military didn't like delays, not when it came to honoring their dead. "You're cutting this close," she said, not raising her voice. "You delay this, you delay his funeral." "I'm sorry," the woman said, but it was flat, automatic. Like saying, "Have a nice day" to a stranger who just buried a child. Selene took a deep breath and ran her fingers across Jorian's photo. He looked so young, because he was. He had just turned 21, barely old enough to rent a car, old enough to wear a uniform, carry a rifle and be saluted when he was zipped into a body bag. "I need to be on that plane," she said again. "My son is being flown with me. He asked me to take him home. I won't let you stop that." Behind her, someone muttered, "This is unbelievable." She wasn't sure who said it, but more heads were turning now. A middle-aged couple waiting in line had taken a step closer. A young woman in scrubs was holding her phone, angling it just enough to catch the scene. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But something about the moment felt charged, like everyone could sense something wasn't right. Laska stood straighter. "Ma'am, please don't raise your voice." "I haven't raised my voice," she replied. "I just need you to remain calm. I've been calm since I walked in here," Selene said. "I've been nothing but respectful, and what I'm getting in return is delay, suspicion, and disrespect on the worst day of my life." A hush fell over the terminal. She wasn't yelling, but she didn't need to. Her words landed with the weight of every mother who's ever had to walk through fire and be questioned on the other side of it. But it wasn't just about protocol anymore. It felt like something else was crawling beneath it. Selene didn't plan to read it aloud. She hadn't planned to speak much at all. But when the woman behind the counter gave that same tired, blank stare, the kind you give someone you've already decided doesn't belong, something in Selene shifted. She slowly unzipped the side pocket of her leather folder. Inside was a smaller envelope, taped shut, and marked in Jorian's handwriting. "Open if I can't make it home myself." She had stared at that envelope for 3 days before she opened it. But this morning, she had. Now she unfolded the letter with the same care she once used to wrap his baby clothes. "Would you like me to read you what he wrote?" she asked quietly, more to herself than anyone else. The counter-agent didn't answer. Laska tilted his head, hesitant. The young woman in scrubs kept recording. Solène began to read. Mum, I know you hate goodbyes, so I won't make this long. If you're reading this, something happened. I didn't mean for it to. I wasn't looking to be a hero. I just wanted to serve right, with my name clean. I told you when I enlisted, if anything went wrong, I'd want you to be the one to bring me home. You promised, remember? You said, always. I love you for that. You're stronger than anyone knows. Don't let them treat you like you're small. Ever. You walk with your head high. She folded the letter back into its envelope and looked up. He wrote that to me in case he didn't make it back alive. And I'm doing exactly what he asked me to do. The silence afterward was thick. Not just awkward, but charged. Laska's expression softened, if only for a moment. I understand this is emotional, he said, his voice lower now. But no, Solène interrupted. You don't understand. You don't understand what it's like to bury a child. You don't understand what it's like to get a call at 2:12 in the morning and hear someone say, "We regret to inform you." And you certainly don't understand how it feels to show up with everything in order and still be looked at like you're lying. The man in the veteran's hat stepped closer. Ma'am, he said, if they don't let you on that plane, I'll raise hell for you myself. More murmurs from the growing line. Laska shifted again, suddenly aware of how quiet the terminal had gotten. He cleared his throat. I'm going to call operations again, he said. We'll get this sorted. But Solène had already turned to the crowd. Would any of you like to see the escort orders? They're signed by the US Army. Dated, verified. A man in a dress shirt stepped forward. I believe you, he said plainly. You don't need to prove anything to us. I do, apparently, she said, her voice tightening. Just not to the people who are supposed to know better. The woman behind the counter finally looked at her. Really looked. Her face didn't change, but her eyes flickered, just for a second, like the words had finally broken through the wall. You ever lose someone in uniform? Solène asked her. She shook her head once. No words, just discomfort. Then maybe think about how you treat someone who has. The veteran reached out and gently tapped the photo of Jorian still lying on the counter. You said he was 21. Solène nodded. He enlisted at 19. Wanted to serve before he went to college. Said it made him feel like he was part of something. Looks like a fine young man, the vet said. You raised him well. That's when the phone behind the counter rang. The woman picked it up, listened, said nothing for several seconds, then slowly hung up. That was operations, she said, almost in a whisper. They confirmed the authorization. You're cleared to proceed. No apology. No thank you. Just a clearance. Solène didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just gathered the documents, slid Jorian's photo back into her folder, and looked them both in the eye. I didn't come here for your permission, she said. I came here to keep my promise. But even after that, the woman behind the counter didn't budge. Solène stepped back from the counter, her folder pressed tight to her side, her jaw locked in quiet restraint. She'd been cleared, on paper, but the atmosphere hadn't changed. The apology never came. The tension never lifted. It hung there like a weight no one wanted to acknowledge. She stood still, waiting for the gate number to flash on the nearby screen, refusing to look shaken, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. Her knees wanted to give way. She wouldn't let them. Then came the whispering. Two agents behind the counter leaned toward each other, just out of earshot, but not out of sight. One nodded toward Solène, the other shrugged, lips tight, expression unreadable. To them, the conversation was over. To Solène, it was just getting started. Behind her, the older veteran hadn't moved. Neither had the nurse in scrubs, who was still recording quietly. Her phone held chest high, the camera steady. Another man further back leaned against his suitcase, arms crossed, watching everything unfold like it was part of something larger. Then Solène's phone rang. It buzzed in her bag once, twice. Sharp. Urgent. She fumbled for it and saw the number. Fort Carson Casualty Affairs Office. She answered immediately. Mrs. Drayton, this is Sergeant Esteban Reyes, coordinating Jorian's arrival this morning. I'm calling to confirm you've boarded, correct? Her voice caught for half a second. No, she said slowly. I'm still at the Monroe check-in counter. There was a long pause. Still at the counter? Reyes repeated. Yes, I've been delayed. Staff insisted on verifying my authorization even after I gave them the full documentation. I've just now been cleared. Another pause. That's not acceptable, Reyes said sharply. They received notification from us yesterday, ma'am. Everything was pre-cleared. You're listed as next of kin and sole escort. They were briefed. I know, she said. He exhaled, slow and deliberate. Can I speak to a supervisor? Selene looked at the woman behind the counter. The casualty affairs officer from Fort Carson would like to speak with someone in charge. The agent hesitated, then picked up the phone and handed it over without saying a word. Selene watched as Lasker put the call to his ear, his posture changing within seconds. He turned slightly away but didn't realize the volume of his voice carried. Yes, sir. Yes, we were just trying to... Of course, sir. I understand. There was no more doubt in his tone now. Just compliance. He hung up, walked back over, and said stiffly, Sergeant Reyes sends his apologies for any confusion. You're cleared to proceed directly to the gate. They've also called ahead to Denver and Colorado Springs to ensure everything is handled properly from this point forward. Still no apology from him. Just more of the same. Cold process. No humanity. Selene stepped past him, slowly, not in defiance, but because it took everything in her to keep moving. The veteran followed her, gently guiding her carry-on. You all right? He asked softly. No, she said, but I will be. They reached the TSA checkpoint, and for once there were no questions. The agents waved her through. She was allowed to keep the folder in her hands. One of them asked if she wanted an escort to the gate. She declined. At the gate, the airline rep on duty, a different face, greeted her with a forced smile. We've been informed of your arrival, Ms. Drayton. The casket is being handled now. We'll begin boarding shortly. If you'd like to pre-board, we can arrange... I'll wait, Selene said, taking a seat near the window. Outside, through the glass, she saw the cargo being moved. Slowly, carefully. The flag on the casket was crisp, perfectly folded over the box. Two handlers paused to remove their hats before approaching. That small act, that unspoken reverence, meant more than any words she'd heard all morning. Selene pressed her hand to the window. The woman in scrubs came over and knelt beside her. I'm sorry for what they put you through, she said gently. I recorded it. If you ever want it deleted, I'll delete it. But if you want people to see how they treated you... Selene looked at her, eyes clear, expression unreadable. Keep it, she said. Let them see what strength looks like. But the apology came far too late for what had already been taken from her. When the gate agent finally called for pre-boarding, Selene stood without a word. She walked slowly, holding her folder like it was the only thing holding her together. There were no smiles, no pleasantries, just a quiet nod toward the jet bridge. As she stepped onto the plane, the air felt colder. Not from the temperature, but from the absence of warmth. No one greeted her. No flight attendant extended a hand. It was as if she were just another passenger. Except she wasn't. She moved toward her assigned seat, second row, window side. The veteran who had stood by her was further back. He tipped his head when they made eye contact, a silent reminder that someone still saw her. She sat down slowly, held her bag on her lap, looked out the window, where the loading area was still active. Then she saw it, Jorian's casket being wheeled into the cargo hold. She didn't flinch, but her hand tightened around the armrest. The flag was still draped with precision. The soldiers escorting it moved deliberately, no wasted motion. There was dignity in the way they worked. It was the first time since arriving that Selene had felt like her son was being treated the way he deserved. The seat beside her stayed empty. Passengers filed in quietly, eyes forward. Most didn't look her way. A few glanced, held it for a second, then turned back just as fast. People know when something heavy is near, they just don't always know what to do with it. A flight attendant came down the aisle with a stack of water bottles, stopping row by row. When she reached Selene, she hesitated. I'm sorry, she murmured, placing a bottle on the empty tray table. Selene didn't answer. Not out of rudeness. She just didn't have space for it right now. As the engine started, she opened her bag and pulled out the second letter, not the one from Jorian's final envelope. This one was older, mailed to her just 3 months ago. She unfolded it and read it like she'd read it 20 times before. Because she had. "Hey, Mom, I finally got qualified on the range today. Sergeant says I'm a good shot, better than most in my group. I think I surprised him. I told him you used to make me practice focus when I was a kid. Remember those candle drills? Anyway, don't worry about me. I've got a good team. We look out for each other. I miss your cornbread. The chow here tastes like cardboard. Love you always, your boy. Jay." She smiled faintly, just for a moment. He had always signed his letters that way. Your boy. Her hand slipped into her purse and touched the small silver pendant she always carried, the one Jorian had given her the night before his deployment. It was a simple charm. 2 interlocked circles. "It means you and me don't break," he had said. No matter what. The plane began to taxi. Out the window, dawn broke in streaks of pink and orange across the sky. Somewhere below, in the cargo, her son was making his final journey home. She turned her face to the window, eyes wet but unblinking. Across the aisle, a man in a suit cleared his throat and leaned over. "Is he... your son?" She nodded once. "I saw the flag," he said, his voice low. "I'm sorry." She didn't speak. What could she say? That sorry doesn't mean anything when it's handed to you like a receipt? That the pain doesn't lessen because someone finally sees it? Still, she appreciated the attempt. The plane lifted off the runway, and with it, so did every memory she carried. She remembered Jorian's first steps in the hallway of their duplex, the way he clapped when she gave him a spoonful of mashed peas, the time he stayed up past midnight, helping her prep her classroom before the school year started, the way he hugged her at the bus station before leaving, whispering, "I got this, Ma. You don't have to worry." He was wrong. She would always worry. Always. But what awaited her in Colorado would force her to confront something deeper. When the plane touched down at Colorado Springs Airport, the sky was a wide canvas of pale blue. The mountains stood far off in the distance, quiet and unmoved. Solène remained seated as the other passengers began to gather their bags. No one spoke to her. A few glanced her way, then quickly looked down at their phones or shuffled into the aisle. She didn't move. Not until the flight attendant quietly approached and said, "They've arranged for you to disembark last, Ma'am. Ground personnel will escort you directly." Solène nodded once, her voice still tucked away somewhere she couldn't reach. As the cabin emptied, the silence grew louder. The veteran passed by and stopped at her row. "You take care now," he said, touching his chest lightly before continuing down the aisle. She stood when the gate cleared, her folder still in hand. The same one she hadn't let go of since Monroe. It felt like part of her now, like if she put it down, she might come apart too. On the jet bridge, 2 uniformed army personnel waited. One young, one older. The older man stepped forward first. "Mrs. Drayton," he said softly, "I'm Captain Alder. This is Specialist Mora. We're here to escort you and your son to the base chapel." "Thank you," she replied, the words dry in her mouth. They led her through a private side door near baggage claim. Out on the tarmac, the casket was being moved with care again, just as it had been before. That, at least, remained consistent. As the van pulled away from the airport, Solène finally spoke again. "Did you hear what happened in Monroe?" Captain Alder glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "I did. The report reached us this morning. I'm sorry." She nodded slowly. "I just wanted to do right by him," she said. "And instead I was treated like a problem. Like I needed to be explained." The younger soldier, Mora, turned toward her. "Ma'am, you don't need to explain anything. We see this more than we should. It isn't okay." She appreciated the honesty, the way he didn't try to patch it up with soft words. They drove the rest of the way in silence. When they arrived at Fort Carson, the gates opened wide. Uniformed guards saluted as the van passed. For a moment, Solène's breath caught. This was where her son had trained, where he had walked, eaten, laughed, probably cursed out loud during early drills. It was sacred ground now, in a strange and painful way. Inside the base chapel, preparations were underway. Rows of chairs, a large framed photo of Jorian on an easel, his boots and helmet resting on a folded flag. There was no music playing, Just the quiet shuffle of soldiers and staff moving about, getting things right. Selene stepped inside and stopped cold. There it was, his dress uniform. Hung neatly on a form, the medals perfectly aligned. She walked toward it, barely hearing the captain behind her. "He was proud of this uniform," Alder said. Said he wanted to show it off when he got home for Thanksgiving. Selene reached out, touching the edge of the sleeve. Her fingers lingered on the stitching. He had told her he liked the weight of the jacket, said it made him stand straighter. She swallowed hard. "I never wanted him to wear this in a box," she whispered. Captain Alder stayed quiet. Then came the voices. 2 women from the base's family services office walked over, holding a clipboard and a folder. "Mrs. Drayton," one began, "we have media inquiries. Several national outlets have requested to speak with you after the video from Monroe went viral this morning. It's gaining attention." Selene turned slowly. "What video?" "Someone recorded the exchange with the airline. It's all over now. News anchors, veterans organizations. There's a lot of people wanting to hear from you." She sat down on the nearest bench, the weight of it all pressing against her. "I don't want attention," she said. "I want my son's name to be respected. That's all." "We understand," the woman said gently. "But sometimes stories like yours shift something. They remind people how far we still have to go." Selene closed her eyes for a moment. Thought about that morning at the Monroe counter. The silence, the cold stares, the way she had to fight just to be seen as a mother, not a threat. Her voice came quiet but firm. "If I speak, it's going to be about him, not about me. I want them to know who he was, not just how they treated me, but even in her private sorrow, someone was watching and listening." By the next morning, Solene's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Calls came from area codes she didn't recognize. Messages poured in, some from people she hadn't spoken to in years, others from complete strangers who had seen her face online, standing at that airport counter, holding a photo of Jorian like it was the only truth that mattered. She hadn't meant to become a story. She just wanted to bring her son home. The video, just under 2 minutes, showed her speaking calmly to the airline staff, holding out her documents, reading part of Jorian's letter aloud. Her pain wasn't loud or dramatic. It was composed, restrained. That's what struck people. She never shouted. She never cursed. She didn't break. Yet somehow the world around her had. Veteran groups reposted the video. Military families shared it with the caption, "This is our worst fear," and she handled it with grace. Even some airline employees, off-duty, commented beneath it, calling it shameful, saying it shouldn't have happened. Selene didn't know what to do with all of it. She sat in the small military family housing apartment provided by the base, staring at her phone, scrolling through messages she didn't ask for. One text read, "I lost my son in Iraq. You spoke for all of us." Another, "Your strength made me cry in my car. Thank you for standing tall." Still another, "They saw your skin before they saw your pain. I'm sorry." She stopped reading after that one, turned the phone off, set it face down on the table. Later that afternoon, a local reporter from KRDO requested an interview. Said they didn't want to sensationalize, just hear her words. She agreed, but only under one condition. "You say his name," she told the reporter. "Not mine, his. Over and over." The interview was held in the chapel. Just one camera, just one chair, no makeup, no lights, just Selene, holding Jorian's photo, speaking softly. "He was my only child," she said. "He wanted to serve before he did anything else with his life. Said he needed to prove something. To himself, mostly. He wasn't perfect. He left dishes in the sink. He forgot to text me back sometimes. But he always kept his promises." She paused. "I promised him that if he didn't come home on his own, I'd be the one to bring him back. So I did. And they tried to stop me." She didn't have to say who they were. Everyone already knew. The interview aired that night. It spread even faster than the first video. National outlets picked it up. Within 24 hours, Selene was being called a voice of quiet courage, and the mother America didn't want to listen to, but needed to hear. Still, she refused to speak again. Not to the networks, not to the talk shows. She didn't want the spotlight. She only wanted dignity, for Jorian, and for all the others whose names would never trend. That night, Selene sat in the chapel alone after everyone had gone. She walked back to the front where the framed photo stood, just beneath the American flag. She looked at her son's face, that same grin he gave her when he was 5, and thought he could lift a gallon of milk on his own. "I hope you know I kept my word," she whispered. Outside, the wind moved through the courtyard, but inside the chapel, it was still. The next day, the airline issued a public statement. They apologized. Sort of. Blamed procedural oversight, promised updated training, offered to cover all expenses. They never named her directly, never acknowledged what people really saw in that video. But the truth didn't need their words anymore. It was already out there. Selene wasn't a headline. She was a mirror, showing a part of the country it didn't want to see. And Jorian? He became a name spoken in classrooms, at veteran events, in living rooms across the country where mothers watched and thought, "That could have been my boy." But beyond the headlines, something else lingered. Something more permanent. The chapel was full. Rows of dress uniforms filled the pews, some fresh out of boot camp, others worn by veterans with lines carved deep into their faces. Folded programs lay in every hand, each printed with a photo of Jorian, his wide grin beneath the words, "Private First Class Jorian Lennox Drayton. Honor, courage, home." Selene sat at the front, alone but not lonely. She had spent the past week surrounded by logistics, media, and messages she never asked for. But now, at last, this moment belonged to her and her son. The chaplain spoke softly, offering words meant to soothe, but Selene heard none of it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the flag-covered casket. It looked smaller than she remembered. Maybe it was the weight of everything around it, or maybe it was just grief shrinking the world around her. When it came time to speak, she rose without being called. Captain Alder had asked earlier if she wanted someone to accompany her to the podium. She told him no. Her heels echoed against the floor as she walked to the microphone, folder in hand. But this time, the folder wasn't clutched out of fear. It was held with care. She stood for a moment, eyes sweeping the room, then landed back on the casket. "I didn't think I'd be doing this so soon," she began, her voice clear but quiet. "I used to tell Jorian that there were 2 things I never wanted to do in life: bury my child and speak at his funeral. He used to joke, 'You'll do great, Mom. You always talk like you're on stage anyway.'" A few soft chuckles rose from the crowd. She continued, "When he joined the army, I was proud, but I was scared too. He said, 'Mom, if something happens, I want you to be the one who brings me home.' I didn't realize then how serious he was. I thought he just meant it as a comfort. I didn't think it would come to this." She paused, let the quiet settle before unfolding the paper in her hands. "I read this letter at the airport, when they wouldn't believe who I was. I'll read it again now, because I think some people still need to hear it." She read Jorian's words aloud. Every syllable carried weight. "You walk with your head high. Don't let them treat you like you're small. Ever." Her voice cracked slightly. "I've done that, baby," she said, eyes on the casket. "I brought you home." She stepped down from the podium. As she passed the casket, she placed the folded letter on top. The honor guard moved into formation. Taps began to play. That mournful trumpet, impossibly simple and impossibly hard to hear. The folded flag was handed to her with crisp precision. "On behalf of the President of the United States, the United States Army, and a grateful nation," she accepted it with both hands. No tears fell, not in that moment. They would come later, when no one was watching. The service ended. People approached her, offering hugs, words, stories about Jorian, how he helped a fellow recruit pass his fitness test, how he snuck extra snacks into the barracks for a friend who didn't get care packages from home. But Selene kept her words brief. She'd said everything she needed to say at the podium. Back at the temporary apartment that evening, she sat alone, holding the flag on her lap. The phone buzzed again. Another request for an interview. She let it ring. Instead, she turned to the window, looking toward the mountains. Jorian was gone, but his voice was still here. And so was the promise. The video from Monroe had triggered outrage, yes, but it also started conversations. Policies were quietly being reviewed. Some airline employees were now required to take a new form of sensitivity training. None of that would bring her son back. But if it meant the next mother didn't have to go through what she did, that mattered. She whispered it again, to the empty room. "I brought you home." Then she stood up, placed the flag gently on the table, and walked into the kitchen to make coffee. Not because she needed it, but because life was still happening. She would carry Jorian with her, everywhere, every day, and she would never again let anyone question the strength behind her silence. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's something people owe you, especially in your deepest pain. If this story moved you, share it. Let others hear Solenne's voice. Say Jorian's name. And remember, behind every uniform is a family, a promise, and a truth that deserves to be honored.